Hello and welcome to Note to File, a clinical research podcast.
A collection of interviews, candid commentary, and general nonsense for the clinical research community.
Check us out at notetofilepodcast.com.
And now, without further ado, on to the show.
All right, guys, welcome to another Note to File podcast, Sticky Notes edition. Denali, how's it going?
Good. It's going good. No, we weren't here on Tuesday, so it's nice to be back.
Yeah, my bad. We are working on getting Ken Gets rescheduled. That's a particularly exciting one for a lot of people. So hopefully have some news on that here later this week, maybe early next week. I know we got holidays coming up, and
I cannot believe it's already Thanksgiving.
It sneaks up on you. Today's my son's 6th birthday. Happy birthday, Frank. Hope you never watch this terrible podcast, but nonetheless, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. Let's rock and roll. We queued up
There's a
bunch
lot.
of articles.
There's a lot that hit this week in like the clinical trials news space.
Quite a space it is. It's a weird sentence that you're uttered, but
so we're a fairly like niche space. Like actually, I was talking to someone the other day about this, and the term, not actually clinical trials, but I think it's applicable. It had to do with like Muay Thai, frankly, but it had to do with being a micro niche influencer. And I was like, that term is very endearing, and I kind of love it. And I feel like
you are.
Well, I'm
It's
not.
you.
I'm not. I'm sure there are people out there who fit that title, but I love it because we are such like a niche, specialized industry. So anyone who's like an influence in the space, it's like congratulations. There's like 1,000 people.
Yeah, right. Also, I hate the word niche. I say niche.
Huh. I wonder what's correct. Or is it like a regional dialect?
I mean, I think you can say it either way. All right, if you're watching this, do you say niche or do you say niche? I say niche. If you say niche, you're dead to me.
I'm so judging you.
I'm judging you, so how dare you? All right, let's get after it because there's like 6 of these things. I think the first thing I woke up to this morning was a text message about this. Abbott acquiring Exact Sciences. I think the first post I saw about it was like, is this going to happen? And then it sounds like it's a done deal. It's like does it say in here? I was trying to look through some of the more news sites, but everybody now apparently wants you to pay to learn news. So yeah, $20 billion deal. Yeah.
I mean, and this is like, very personally connected. Like Exact Science headquarters is in Madison, Wisconsin. So I have a bunch of people I know who work at Exact who won there. So I mean, wonder how many of them are millionaires now. Probably should reach back out.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and I don't know. I will admit my experience with Abbott is primarily in like the EP cardiology area. I mean, I know they're a big device company that goes well beyond that. We also work with Exact Sciences and working with them now, even on some of their cancer detection trials. We did some of the Cologuard trials, and again, worked with Abbott on some of their dual lead or single lead pacemaker. It seems weird in my mind because they seem like very, very different from one another. But I guess that's Abbott covers a lot more than that, and it's interesting.
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me when I think of Abbott is like their COVID tests. Like they were big in that space for like a hot minute, and so
true.
I mean, like at-home testing type of things. Like there's some alignment there, I guess. Also, I know Exact Science, obviously Cologuard, they're like big thing that they're sort of known for, but they also can sort of purchased other things. Again, a lot of like early detection, blood work type portfolios. So, leaning into that, I could see like, especially if COVID testing are declining, you're not using that as much, you're going to build up the revenue somewhere. But it's interesting. I mean, Exact Science, I think, has always been a fascinating one, at least for like a marketing perspective for me. I think they've done a phenomenal job with Cologuard, like hitting the marketing angle of it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, if you can make, shitting in a box a good marketing, then
and they did
something well. So yeah, we'll see what this means. I'm not smart enough to know, some of the financial things. Like it mentions here, Abbott's financing contemplates absorption of Exact Sciences estimated $1.8 billion of net debt. And where did it mention here? They're acquiring all outstanding shares at $105 per common share in cash. So 21 billion.
I mean, it's interesting too, because over the past, several years, like in the local media and news, we've seen like the ups and downs of impacts of, layoffs and hirings and stuff with Exact. So it all kind of like this adds some color to some of those stories you're hearing about people like right sizing staff and reorganization and all of that to angle it for something like this.
Oh, I do want to hit these. We got a couple comments here that are important to me. Jonathan
Well,
says
yes.
they say it like
Thank you,
Denali in
Jonathan.
Northern Ireland. It doesn't count. And then Christian niche rhymes with itch, more common than in the US. Consider the standard American pronunciation. Rhymes with quiche, more common in the UK. Well, so basically, I'm a true patriot, and you're some kind of Canadian communist or something. Because I say,
I mean, you do live in Oklahoma. That's a pretty
that's
red blood American.
Unfortunate, but true. Okay, great. Thank you guys. Although we have one vote in each direction, so that only gets us
there are two
a little bit down the road
for my direction.
Wow. Okay, I guess that's technically true. Somebody else come in hot with niche versus niche. Anyways, all right, let's move on. We got a bunch to cover here. I thought this was like a nice little article from our boy Dan Shell. What up, Dan? Always a fan of your work. Talking about his recent trip to SCRS in Orlando. Look, site-centricity. We're all probably sick of hearing it, but he kind of breaks down at least some nice examples of collaboration. GSK simplifying single sign-on for sites, which sounds like a small thing, but it ain't. Other companies like Sanofi developing some processes for site feedback that actually gets to the teams who can act on it, which I feel like is something that never seems to happen at the site level. We're always kind of complaining to our poor CRAs who, God bless them, but they're busy. They're not, and they also don't make any decisions.
Their job is not.
They make no decisions, but that's the only person we have in front of us to complain at. So they get the brunt of it. It kind of goes through the same things. He keeps saying, leadership has to support from top down. Feedback loops need to close. They don't. Processes have to evolve. Progress must be measurable. We don't really have any of those things. People still seem to be questioning the value, I think, of CROs and whether they're, helpful or hurtful in terms of some of this.
That's been coming up a lot the past couple of months.
Yeah, but we're seeing, and I don't know if you look at Joel White, who writes a lot about CROs, and obviously it seems like they're doing well. Although I like Joel and his work, I feel like he's maybe a little too a little shilly when it comes to CROs. Like everything they do seems to be great.
Yeah.
So maybe take that with a grain of salt, but it seems like they're winning more business. So not that implies that they're doing something good for the industry, but at least there's a need or something is driving, the use of CROs and their services more and more, right?
Well, I think fundamentally, I'm not saying that there's not a need and there's not a place for it. I just think fundamentally the current model of CROs is jacked up.
Denali is anti-CRO, so mark that down.
Shut up.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, I get what you mean. I think it's still a valid question. Business incentives aren't always aligned with flexibility or a lot of what happens between site and sponsor. The incentives aren't really aligned when you put the CRO in the middle. So it's interesting discussion that's probably not going to go away.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about this, I mean, we've been talking about site centricity for how many years now, right? And I think
4.
Just 4. But I think the concept of it that I keep coming back to is like everyone will agree it's meaningful and useful until it comes time to look at like the final budgets and the final cuts. And then it's like whose teams are actually getting resource to support this outside of the sites. So obviously sites are site-centric. That's who they are. But if you look at sponsors and CROs, like, yeah, there's a lot of work and everyone will say we want to be a site-centric, but you come into like who's getting the resources, whose budgets are being cut, who has the best ROI as a team. You're not a revenue generating team. You're not going to get the attention. And so there's a lot of talk, but I don't think there's a lot of investment in it when it comes to like directly associated ROI, because it's not that simple.
We're revenue centric is what we
are. Right. We're site-centric when it's convenient.
It's true. All right. Let's keep rolling, shall we?
Yes, sir.
I just thought this was an interesting article too, especially like in this day and age.
Speaking of topics we've talked about for years.
Well, yeah. Yeah, we don't, I feel like we don't hear about it as much, at least not not in these terms, decentralized clinical trials. I mean, I think there are aspects, not unlike what I think a lot of us suspected, there are like aspects that are now just sort of folding into clinical trials, but it's not really like this generic push for decentralization. At least, again, in my opinion. But I thought these were interesting, and I think some of the challenges and solutions are maybe a little bit telling about the complexity or the challenges that we may continue to see when trying to implement DCT. And I'm not going to go through all these. We should probably do a better job of like posting these articles in our show notes, because like we talk about them and then
disappear.
I don't do a good job of. Yeah, I mean, I want people to have the opportunity to like read them for themselves at their own pace, because we kind of zip through some of them and don't always give the most detail that we could. But one of the challenges being maintaining data quality, ensuring patient safety in remote settings. Their solution is to implement advanced remote monitoring systems using AI. That's cool, but like I feel like we're real far from that. That's also stuff that like we could do in a non-DCT setting that we don't do. I was going to make a post about this, but like AI is supposed to be great and can do all this crazy stuff. And I feel like some of the use cases in clinical trials would be mind-numbingly simple. I mean, you've got an EDC, you've got electronic source. Why do you need a human being to compare those two things together?
You wouldn't.
We are, though. And we're not just as a human doing it. They're flying all over the country and spending days sitting at the desk across from you to do it.
Well, I mean, I think it's like you can develop something. People have to use it. Like people have to technology vendors and folks can come up with these solutions. But unless the people who are buying it are actually buying it and adopting it, it doesn't matter what the hell you invent.
Yeah, fair.
What your innovations are.
Here, another challenge is ensuring that all participant sites and healthcare providers have access to necessary technology. So the easy solution, here it is. Just develop a standardized user-friendly technology platform that easily integrates into existing site systems. Why didn't I think of that?
Well, so I think, none of these are wrong.
No, it's not wrong. But I mean, the point I made right before we went on, like if you have to solve 10 other like incredibly complex problems just to justify your solution, like that seems like a lot. It's a lot to bite off, right?
Well, it's like we're gonna solve world hunger. All you got to do, feed the people.
Yeah, right,
just simple. Exactly. Just that. It's like, okay, not wrong. Get behind it.
Implementing blockchain-based data management systems. Yeah. Interesting. Anyways, read it again. I've certainly had my like mixed feelings about DCT and some of the things that involves. I don't, believe it or not, I'm not trying to throw the baby out with bathwater, but I think there's still a lot to be solved in terms of accomplishing this at any kind of scale beyond the most niche and not niche applications. But that's just me, what do I know? Very good. The next 3 are yours.
What do we got? Oh, so this one, I'm not sure how I feel about this from a details perspective, because there's some stuff in this article, folks can happily look through this and see that I was like, I don't know if that's 100% accurate. So take this with a grain of salt. But I thought it was an interesting component here about like where the clinical trials software and systems market is going. And it's a pretty significant growth. I think this is not necessarily surprising. And where I kind of see this is like this following a similar trajectory to like electronic health records 15 years ago. I kind of think like from a tech perspective, we are generally kind of in that space where we're just like, yeah, we adopted EHRs and clinical research is a segment of healthcare that just happens to be a little behind. So it makes sense that we're seeing the sort of trajectory as these things move forward, as new regulations require things. I mean, again, like you're seeing a pretty massive uptake, but it's not to necessarily be not expected. And things here are pretty common, like similar to what we talked about earlier. CROs are the primary users that they talk about, and it talks about like sponsor and biotech software. So like, again, it's interesting because there is a segment here of being site-centric and having site-facing solutions. This is primarily focused on sponsor and CRO tech, which again, that's where the money is. That's where you're going to see these billions of dollars. It's not going to be in the sites. But an interesting trajectory. But again, this is where it kind of gets weird, where it's like some of these aren't fully accurate descriptions on what these
aren't quite right.
They're not quite on the nose. So I was like, I don't know if I trust the details, but I think it's an interesting commentary to see where our vendor and tech stacks are for clinical trials, and that we're going to continue to see growth, particularly in the US.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to your point earlier, I guess this isn't necessarily like a shocking revelation that, it's going to grow. The market size is going to grow. I guess as somebody who works at a site, then I'm like, this is just going to mean are there going to be more solutions and more platforms and more everything for us to deal with, which I assume the answer has to be yeah, right? I mean,
you would think, especially if folks are seeing this and whoever is investing money in this space is seeing this potential growth, there's going to be additional investment from outside funding sources to drive this. If they're seeing, hey, this market is there, you're going to get folks investing in the space. That's by default going to drive up a bunch of, startups who are inventing new. And again, I don't inherently disagree, because I think that's how in the competitive landscape, you're going to see folks developing things and you're going to see new innovations come from that competitive landscape, true capitalist approach there. But I also think there's some, especially from a site perspective, you're generally ending up being at the brunt of all of this, and doesn't seem great. So.
Woohoo. It's okay. Maybe, some good comes out of it.
Right. And hopefully, like with the additional money, there's additional pressures for folks to do better. I think there's a lot of stagnation in the industry, where folks have been leaders in the space for a long time and haven't done what they needed to do because they've cornered certain segments of the market. So yeah, there should be people coming up that pushes everyone to do better. And ideally.
Ideally. But I'm curious at what kind of impact the potential, depending on what you believe, the sort of potentially pending AI bubble might have on some of this, if this stuff doesn't pan out quite the way that it's being marketed is panning out. We're already seeing some reports that like the cost is not really in line with the efficiency being saved with some of that stuff. So,
but like, we'll see. I don't know. We talked about that's like the airplane, right? Where it's like the first airplane did not have an ROI, and now we have commercial airlines that certainly do. So like sometimes we have to like crawl before we walk type of scenario.
No, I was born sprinting.
Just straight on out.
If anything, going slower. All right. Let's move on here.
So this came from a paper that was published Monday, I believe, and there was a significant amount of news coverage of this particular paper, but it was basically a report looking at the impact of the NIH grant funding cuts that happened this year. And I think it's interesting. Like we all sort of like had these like hypotheticals or anecdotal stories of how this is impacting clinical research, but I think it was interesting to look at this from a research perspective Basically, it came out and said like 1 in 30 clinical trials, including oncology trials, were impacted, with over like 74,000 participants being impacted by these grants being cut and disrupted. And I think, to no one's surprise, this was disproportionately evident in, DE&I based studies. The other thing that I thought was interesting, again, looking at how our industry is becoming more and more politicized, is that you're also seeing an disproportionate cuts in also infectious disease research as well. So vaccine trials, and you're looking at how things are being politicized, where we're taking arbitrary political views and applying them to science. And I think the impact of that's pretty fucked up.
That usually goes well. Usually turns out for the best, right? inject your politics right into science.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a heterosexual white male, I'm sure it is just great.
I mean, they can also get COVID and die,
Right. So, and we'll know how to treat you when that happens.
Without vaccines.
Well,
Not me. I'm vaccinated. I'm vaccinated up. All right. Don't lump me in. How dare you? But yeah, no, it is interesting. And like you, I think a lot of people, at least I was wondering, like, what kind of impact did this have? I just scrolled past one. Grants were terminated across 24 of the 26 institutes and centers administering active grants. So cumulative value of terminated awards was 1.8 billion.
So
that's not insignificant.
It's not insignificant in the scale of grant funding. It is insignificant in the scale of federal funding, which is the part that's insane to me. It's like, yeah, we're going to cut 1.8 billion for the industry, hugely impactful for this type of trial and the folks who are running these grants. That's like salaries and research labs and all those things. Then you look at the funding in all other aspects and it's minuscule in comparison. So it's just...
Well, yeah, you're saying you basically disrupted science for no true financial benefit to the bottom line that everyone was making such a stink that this was about, right?
I'm not saying it's a rounding error, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not significantly impactful.
Closer to that than not.
Correct.
Yeah, well, but at least they stuck it to them liberal colleges. I think they know more than we do. They think they're so smart.
Research.
They think they're so smart. We'll take away their money.
Mm-hmm.
I'll show them.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see, because again, I think this article looked at the immediate impact of this funding changes. I think what this doesn't necessarily cover, because it's all speculative, is what's the downstream impact of this, of deprioritizing science, of deprioritizing research. How does it impact our clinical research professional work, like pipeline of folks entering the industry, of who are doing science, who are, any of that, I just think is... And then like you look at like, what is it, like something ridiculous, like there's a very significant majority of all drugs that come to market start in like academic bench science spaces as like specific agents. And so like, you're cutting off the drug pipeline potentially at its knees in some regard for like down the road, not immediate, but down the road. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. Hopefully I'll be dead by then. So, all right. Last but not least, I think if I didn't read this article, I read a very similar.
Yeah, article. I mean, this is another one that was published, I think on Monday, maybe. Again in JAMA Internal Medicine, which is the same as the other article, but basically it's looking at like of a chunk of FDA approved medications that were ran from 2015 to 2018 across 90 plus countries, looking at like, okay, where are those drugs actually available now? So we went in, we ran clinical trials globally across dozens of countries, and then like 25% or less than 25% of the medicines tested in those countries are actually available in those countries.
Right.
So we go to these places that are cheap to run trials in, but they can't afford the drug once it comes to market.
Yeah, I was going to see, I didn't scroll down on this one, but I did read, this one doesn't seem to lay it out, but because I was reading, we go to countries like Turkey and run a clinical trial, and then 4 years later the drug has been approved for 4 years and it's still not even available like in that country, which, I mean, doesn't that seems to violate one of the like basic ethical principles of clinical research, which is that like you test on the people who like will get the treatment, right? Like, or have access to the treatment.
Well, and then that's defining like who are you defining as has access to the treatment, right? Like, are you just looking at race, gender, ethnicity, and like not is nationality one of those pieces that folks are looking at, or is that we're just saying, hey, we're going to these countries because that gets a certain number of, you know, Black individuals because we're in this country in Africa when we're not actually ethnicity or nationality. I don't know.
It did quote some areas in Africa too, where like the drug never became available, or you know, the prescription uptake was something like, you know, single digit percentages when perhaps a large percentage of patients like from the studies had been recruited from those geographies. So yeah, it's weird, right? And then you start to wonder like what kind of sort of bait and switch are they doing like for these trials? And we see it not irregularly. Multinational clinical trial, US sites aren't doing so good, but Poland is out enrolling everybody times 20. So like maybe they have a different standard of care, makes it easier to enroll patients. Maybe they have to have American sites, but like they're not doing the majority of the enrolling. But then what happens like post approval? Like, I don't know. And we don't know that. You're muted.
Sorry, my doorbell rang. So I know there's like some complexities of like they have to approve the drug right in their country, and like their version of FDA potentially has to approve, and where are these countries with that level, or what organizations are even approving them for this? But it does seem fundamentally like, this is too extreme of a word, but predatory in a way, where it's like, hey, it's easy to use your populations, you're inexpensive, you have the demographics we need. It allows us to check our box. After that, we don't really care what happens to you.
Well, didn't we do like in a previous one of these like some legislation that in order to have a drug approved in the US, you've got to have a certain percentage of US participants?
Well, and that's been changing. They've been increasing that now. Yeah,
which is good. I mean, I think it's the same concept. Like if a small percentage of Americans were, you know, used in the data, like, but you're going to use that data from Poland and Turkey and God knows where else to like approve it in the US. I don't know. It all seems weird, but I guess.
Well, you know, the whole US one though was like it was in the same sweeping concept of like, we're going to decrease the DE&I pieces of it. We're going to focus less on race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, and we're going to focus more on nationality. And it sort of is in that sweeping motion of like deprioritizing DE&I and increasing like national incentives, right? Like for like manufacturing for drugs and stuff. It was like similar sweep of that. Yeah. Again, I don't think it's necessarily incorrect as far as like you want the drugs to be tested on the people who are going to be taking them. But I also think then like that, what does that do for then the drug development pipeline? Because it is expensive and difficult to run trials in the US. But should it be? Right? Like, is that appropriate? Because these are the populations and these are the stipulations and regulations, and like maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's not inherently bad. No. Well, I guess we'll see. Very good. Okay, we did another one.
We did it. What do we got next week? Well, it's Thanksgiving.
So
on Thursday. I think we have a sticky notes on Tuesday. So we'll find some more shit to talk about on Tuesday. We'll see what we can dig up.
We will. Then we'll have a couple of guests to round out towards the end of the year. We're getting down into the holidays. It's a little more. Yeah. It's a little more challenging, but.
Well, yeah. I mean, people have outages and stuff.
Nonetheless.
And we'll be looking at 2026. So we'll have to look at a whole new. So if there's folks who want to come on, I guess. I mean, we're looking at 26.
Yeah. If you guys have recommendations, suggestions, people you want to hear, come on, please let us know. You can always go to notefilepodcast.com or reach out to either one of us on LinkedIn. It's probably easier way to get there.
Unless you want to be anonymous, and then you can use notefilepodcast.com because we do have an anonymous submission opportunity if folks are shy.
Cool.
Cool.
All right. Rock and roll.
Catch you Tuesday.
Later, guys. Thanks for listening to Note to File. We're committed to continuing to bring you independent and unfiltered coverage of the clinical trial industry.
We want to talk about what you want to hear. So if you have something on your mind, hit us up at notetofilepodcast.com.